Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and have you used a CGM before? CGM is continuous glucose monitor, and there's different options out there. Ideally, you can get it from your doctor, but they seem to just want to wait until you're type 2 diabetic and not be preventative. I would like us to take ownership of our health and make choices now to prevent having high, low glucose readings and optimize your health from the inside out by testing and not guessing. And that includes a CGM that goes on for 14 days, and you can order one via NutriSense. And a CGM is giving you glucose updates with a small device in the back of your arm 24/7. Totally easy. I actually did a video on my YouTube channel, Low Carb Athlete, how to apply this CGM. First time, you're kind of scared, but it doesn't hurt. But it gives you real-time glucose readings. Glucose response to meals. You'll learn about what foods are reactive to you, and that could be a healthy food that you think is great, but it could raise your glucose. Simple things as stevia, for me, raise my glucose. Chewing gum, raise my glucose. Stress, when I'm driving a car and there's traffic, raises my glucose. Every stress response is a glucose response. So learn how to manage your stress. Learn how to pick right foods for you, unless you can, do other lab testing and figure out vibrant wellness food zoomers, but it's kind of expensive for people. So if you can wear a CGM, it's a great way to learn about stress, food, exercise, stacking movement with your nutrition. Figure out how to balance your blood sugar. So we want to learn more about how to exercise and eat or not eat. And morning cortisol, does it raise your glucose? If there's hidden stressors at nighttime, does your glucose go up higher while you're sleeping? So it gives us lots of clues that we can put in our investigation when we are working on your personalized fueling, training, and performance program to improve fat loss, performance, and longevity. So head to NutriSense website, nutrisense.io, how it works. You can learn more about your habits, your routines, your relationship to food, a little bit more. Great app to use, and it can sync on to different programs, so you can put it all together. So if you want to get started with your journey in NutriSense, I suggest this to all my clients. Use at least 30 days. So you can do a 30-day, 90-day, different programs, but you can pick which one you want. You get the sensor in the mail, put it on, lasts for 14 days, sync it to the app, and get your readings on there. And then if you're doing my VIP coaching program, I'm working with you to correlate this data together. So begin your health optimization journey with NutriSense, and you can save on your order with our code, as usual, Low Carb Athlete. So no carbs is not our goal, it's carb timing, and using NutriSense, you can help figure out your nutrient-dense whole food plan and when to adjust your macros based on your exercise intensity, duration, based on your life stressors, and learn more. So it's nice to have this data. So test and not guess with NutriSense. Let me know how you like it.
All right, guys, I've got someone new on the show today to help us figure out how you can fuel, train, and perform your best as an athlete, as I say, for events this year. But really, our main goal, hopefully, is longevity and how to improve your future self and doing everything we can do now as preventative, so we are not going to become a burned out, broken down athlete, and really figure out how you can take ownership of your health and looking for red flags and identifying those through functional lab testing as a blood chemistry panel you can get from your doctor or online. And I found Dr. Matt on to talk about iron, ferritin levels, and all these different things, signs and symptoms of when things are off and how to identify them and what we can do to take action of them. So, hi, Matt. Thanks for coming on my podcast today.
Hey, thanks a lot, Debbie. Pumped to be here.
Well, talk a little bit, but you went to Bastyr up in Where'd you go to school?
Yeah, got my naturopathic doctorate at Bastyr in Kirkland, Seattle area. 2009 graduate.
Nice. And what made you kind of follow your passion? What was that to get into naturopathic medicine? What led you that road?
Yeah, basically I was 16 years old. I'm 42 now, but I was at 16. I wanted to play college basketball. That was just my thing. I wanted to play college basketball. And so I was doing workouts at a trainer and stuff. And my mom bought me a book just about kind of nutrition and health and stuff. And just thinking I'm going to help out, my son here. And because I was just like a sugaraholic, just junk food addict. And, wondering why it's like taking me over 7 minutes to run a mile. All the other guys, it's like 6 minutes, 5:30, and nobody's, trying. That's just how we are as, 16-year-olds should be at least. And I was way behind. I was like, man, I got to figure something out here. And so, got the book. I read it on a trip to California, actually. And, it was written by this medical doctor in Florida. Completely changed. I went from basically drinking Mountain Dew, between basketball games and, eating Charleston chews to like, okay, I'm done with all that stuff. And just slowly, started accumulating better habits in my nutrition routine over the next 5-10 years, and then now it's stuck. But that really is what got me thinking about basically nutrition and some other way. So I ended up going to play basketball for 2 years at a small NAIA college in Portland, and then realized I'm not going to be an NBA basketball player. I better figure something else out here. Which led me to, I went to Oral Roberts University in Oklahoma, met a medical doctor there who practiced how I would want to practice. I started interning with him in Florida. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And so when after I took my MCAT test, the admissions test for medical schools, I was like, man, hey, what should I do this summer for medical school? And I met this doctor had come back into town from Florida into Oklahoma. And he's like, you know what, Matt? You should not go to standard medical school. You should go to Bastyr University in Seattle, Washington. Because if you go to standard medical school like I did, you're just going to have to relearn everything the next 4 years to actually help out, all the stuff that really needs help right now. Unless you want to be like a brain surgeon or be an emergency medicine doctor kind of thing. So I was like, okay. So yeah, I had no idea Bastyr existed, that naturopathic medicine existed. I thought, I'm going to go UCLA, I'm going to go UW for medical school kind of thing. I'm going to be a great medical doctor. And you completely flipped my world. And I'm so grateful. So that took me to Bastyr, down the naturopathic route. And it's been the best decision ever.
Yeah, I think it's really looking at what the reason is you want to go into medical industry, because as we know, functional medicine side and naturopathic route is looking at the root cause of illnesses. And as I watch people, I know family members and my parents get older, and is really looking out. Doctors don't treat the why. They're just giving us different Band-Aids to, solve the problem temporarily. And it's really what I find it fascinating is what we can do to optimize our health and to improve it, not just fix it with the Band-Aid and then continuing on. And then as I find more and more the, antibiotics and how they impact our health and how everything can be just different things that we can do, nutritional therapy to help improve our health and wellness, but identify things ahead of time rather than, going to the doctor when you're sick and have problems is what we can take control of now and take ownership of our health by just getting our functional lab tests, as I keep talking about with clients. Ask what you can get from your doctor and insurance, and then you can get the rest online. But, I found even getting insulin tested, I couldn't get my doctor to do it under insurance unless I was diabetic. I thought, okay, that makes no sense. You want to wait till I am type 2 diabetic to test my insulin, or if it was running in my family, if I had genetics to be type 2 diabetic, which I don't think is necessarily what we're looking for. So kind of what do you find is your area you want to focus on in helping people now as you have your own practice?
Yeah, so I say just off piggyback on what you're talking right there. A lot of times, even the humans in the industrialized world in America, we've almost been taught that basically either you're perfectly healthy or now you have a disease. Like there's no in between. There's no like I'm going towards this place out trajectory I don't want in my health. It's like either you're there or you're not, because which is like the model. Either I can diagnose you with type 2 diabetes, or your hemoglobin A1C is 6.4. It's not 6.5, so you don't actually have diabetes yet. You're like, whoa, that's just like a tenth of a percentage away from the actual diagnosis. But in reality, if it's above 5.2%, you're aging at a way higher clip than you want to be aging. So that's, yeah. And the other thing is, on whether or not your insurance will cover it, that kind of thing, you can get, I take partial insurance. I'm like 50% cash.
That's good.
Insurance clinic. But we have a thing set up with this basic LabCorp Quest Labs where you can get, you can pay cash for your labs and literally it'll be like 75% less than what your insurance rate is.
I saw that.
20% copay or whatever. It's like, well, you've already, that iron and thyroid panel, and say your insulin, which is like $7, for cash, you're probably less than $100. And just by your copay is probably going to be more than 100 for your labs you're going through insurance. So I try to tell people all the time, don't let your insurance get in the way of your health. We want catastrophic things, that kind of thing, but don't let it get in the way of your health. Because if you're already to the place where, I got this one guy, he's coming in concerned about what's his insurance going to cover, and he's got like raging neuropathy in both legs. His wife is like, there's something seriously wrong with him. And it's like, his blood sugar is 400 and his A1C is 15. You're like, you got crazy diabetes now. But that could all been averted if he would have, just a year ago, 2 years ago, even 3 years ago, just like, hey, let me get just like $50, $75 maybe, a little panel. Let me see just like where my glucose is trending, and be way ahead of it, never have to go through that situation. So I think that's huge. I talk all the time about accumulating health. We want to, that's like one of the few things. There's a lot of things in life, I think, accumulating, and they're just like a waste because we're all going to die and lose them all. But health is something, we can build. And like the more health we build, the better we feel, the better our family feels, the better the community around us is, the less fear we have in general about anything, coming with us if we feel, fantastic, awesome, energized, vital, invigorated. And, for kind of your community that you're dealing with, the endurance athletes and that kind of thing, if they feel awesome, they're going to perform better. If your health is actually building day after day, week after week, year after year, you're going to feel like, wow, I'm going to be more capable, as opposed to, shoot, man, maybe I hit 50 or so, I'm going to have to kind of like slow it down, not do as many runs. I'm not going to be able to do those races anymore. I'm going to have to just keep tapering it back. When there are people, my dad actually, he's a 68 now, but he was like a CrossFit athlete or did like the masters competitions and stuff. And, it's just insane what the body's capable of, even at how it can still build muscle. You can still gain stamina. You can still build endurance, if given the right inputs. So I'm totally with you. what you're bringing. I love that attitude and that style of going about things.
Yeah, I think it is, I think it's so important to just be preventative. And I don't know why people, even athletes, wait until they're broken to spend the money on their health, getting the functional lab test, even though it takes, $100, $200 to get the labs, versus waiting until, like, my story is I had chronic stress, adrenal exhaustion starting 2013. And then I didn't really change my life until I moved from Bellevue, Seattle to here, North San Diego, to change my whole life schedule and approach to life. But it is really not waiting until you can't do anything. And I see that, as my dad passed away last year, my mom's 81, and, just watching how it happens as you age, as your parents age, is really a good incentive to do stuff for yourself now when you're 40, 50, 60 years old, and not wait. And it's just so simple. So I'm trying to share to our athletes, because a lot of athletes think they're fit and healthy and not realize that they could be unhealthy. Even though you're exercising all the time, they're not doing what I call the holistic method, working on nutrition that's personalized, their exercise, the Goldilocks effect, not too much, too little of everything. And then, of course, sleep and stress management and
Yeah.
movement, mobility, and then I have digestion, gut health, hydration with right mineral balance, and happiness, gratitude, play, because we tend to be little type A, triple A personality here and be so driven ambitious that we forget to let loose and relax and loosen up a little bit. Because I used to be so uptight and all about training and racing and nothing else. So that's kind of my approach, but I really wanted to share your information today for our athletes that think they're invincible, that we feel like we can do an Ironman, we can do a 50K, 100-miler race and think we're healthy. But really, I've found over the years of being in this field for 25 years that it's not everyone looks healthy. It's not a picture of like Ironman 70.3 in Oceanside the other weekend. 70.3 half is a half Ironman, but a lot of people don't look great. And just because you can do that distance doesn't mean you're taking care of the whole you from the inside out.
Man, that's so good. Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, actually I had this lady, 52-year-old, and she's kind of come around this year. So she does ultras, and she basically, so she went into menopause. And she had been feeling great, but there are a lot of things in her lifestyle, the stressors that she was under, her sleep patterns, her travel schedule, that she really wouldn't, because she felt good and she was able to do these things. She couldn't basically hear them from me that there's value. Like, this actually is valuable for you to get, on this sleep routine. It actually is valuable, like that wine you're drinking every night. I know it's like you think it's helping you sleep, but in reality, you're not getting that stage 4, stage 5 sleep. And so you keep on putting in, 100-hour, miles a week, and then you're doing these ultras, once a month kind of stuff. I know you have this like inborn genetic potential that's awesome, and this love and this passion, but it's just not going to keep coming at some point, especially for women. Those hormones are going to go from like estrogen of 300 to an estrogen of like 5. And then you're not going to have basically this reservoir of, anti-inflammatory effects, of growth promoting effects. That's just always there month after month, month after month. And so unfortunately for her, she literally about 8 months ago just went bam, hit a wall. You could say bonked, but it's life bonking, unfortunately. And now we're basically just having to, build her back up. And it's going to take, unfortunately, no matter how amazing a doctor or no matter how you are about the program, it's just going to take a human being. And there's a million things happening every second, every day in it. And so it's going to take, probably 10 times as long to get her rocking again as it would have if, the years leading up. But if she would have supported like her adrenal response more, because especially, people that are doing tons of running ultras, they're very, very lean. At least are lean. And so there's not like that reservoir of fat tissue to offset. Hormones are gone. Like when ovaries say kaput, okay, you don't have like fat tissue that's pumping out any amount of them anymore. That's hardly anything. So you're asking your adrenals to do everything now. And if they aren't doing it, because you've been stressing it. And I think it's safe to say, whether it's, you're an intense CrossFitter, you're an ultra marathon runner, you're just running standard marathons, these even half marathons or a bunch of Spartan races, that is really stressful on the human being. And that is like super physiological activity. That's not, that's not like running 2-3 miles a day and just like, enjoying life and throwing some sprints. And that's super physiological activity. So you're gonna have more breakdown than you are going to have being built up, unless you are being so on it about it. Because I personally love exercise. It's like my favorite. It's my hobby. That's like, what do we do? Well, we can exercise again. Like my kids, let's do it. Let's do another workout, or let's do soccer. Let's do some go to the track. My kids are at the track right now. If we're not being cautious and very diligent, and consider, okay, how am I measuring the rest of my body? Then we're probably going to end up in a space we did not want to end up in, and we didn't even need to end up in. That's the biggest thing. People don't realize you could be where you don't even ever go to that space where it sucked being in your body. Basically, you don't ever have to even go there. You could be the person where it's like, geez, like I just kind of keep on building. But yes, I got a lot of good routines in place. I'm conscious about my hydration. I'm cautious about my caffeine intake. I'm considering, okay, what's happening? Is my training actually leading to less sleep? And am I not getting sleep because I'm overtraining? I'm checking my lab results. Am I vegetarian, vegan kind of thing? And I'm still out there. I got those all the time. Vegetarians and vegans who are, putting out insane amounts of energy and running and all that. And it's like, man, just literally talking yesterday from Florida. And yeah, hair's falling out, heart palpitations, saying she's got, the cardiologist saying you got arrhythmias now. And it's like, this is a vital young lady that should be good to go, and do all the things she has, her hopes and all that she has, athletically, but because of information she got that I would say wasn't optimal for her, the lifestyle she was trying to commit to. Now she's in a really stuffed place. She can't play soccer anymore. And she's just got to watch her teammates play, while she just, essentially recovers now. So yeah, it's, and she also could have got, if she would have had her labs done, her iron levels, her B12 levels checked ahead of time, she wouldn't have been in that situation. And she probably would have seen that, wow, if you want to be vegetarian, if you want to be vegan, go for it. It's going to make life a lot more challenging. And you're going to have to be that person who is doing 1,000 times more than the person that's willing to eat meat, a couple times a week even. So it is feasible. I do some, cancer patients that we keep pretty low on the meat intake. And we can maintain their iron levels and B levels and everything with just their food. But you do need, at least in my experience, at least a couple meals a week of some high iron food to maintain those levels. And these people are not, slamming their feet, like crazy and breaking, having that, that red blood cell hemolysis and losing all iron, with all those steps kind of thing, or, working out 2 hours a day kind of thing. So.
Yeah, she needs to. I wrote a book a few years ago now. Life is not a race; it is a journey. To share my personal story of what happened to me as a Ironman endurance athlete, and how I went from top of my age group to gaining 30 pounds without changing anything. I didn't change my nutrition. I was eating probably too low carb and not eating enough, and then I just was having naps every day and not sleeping in the middle of the night and all those big red flags. But my mission now is to help other people avoid going through what I went through by talking about what we're doing today is be preventative. Don't wait till you're screwed up and you have to 5-10 years to get better like I did, because no one could help me figure out what was actually going on. But it was what I would say, you can't out supplement poor lifestyle habits, and you can't out exercise poor nutrition habits. You have to work on the whole you, and it's a lot of work. And you can, I was going doctor to doctor to doctor and getting all these supplements from functional med doctors, naturopaths, and then, the regular doctor says you need antidepressants and nothing's wrong with you. But until I changed my whole life schedule and changed how I showed up to life each day, did I start to heal. But I think people need to, it takes an athlete a long time to not be so competitive, so ambitious and driven, and realize, okay, it's okay. Give yourself permission to push pause and reset and not go, 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 and have that addiction to busyness and thrive on more is better. And you have to learn how to chill out, which we don't normally do very well.
Totally. That's good. That's good. Yeah, I think what you said, a lot of times you go in and you get the labs done, especially standard medicine, and you're told, hey, say for iron, which is like a common one amongst this population, especially ladies, is you got your CBC done, the hemoglobin, hematocrit, red blood cell counts are good to go. So you don't have, you don't have iron deficiency. That's not what's causing, your performance decline, your hair falling out, your low level depression, lack of motivation, your heart rate being at like 90 when you're resting versus 55 when you're resting. That's not it. And that can be demoralizing. That will get a person on antidepressant thinking, okay, it is just in my head. This is just me. When it usually isn't. I've seen people in the most crazy spaces, that you would think, yes, they are, psychologically, maybe the things are just off. Maybe they do need a psychiatric med to help them out. But then you run just simple, which, in my mind is super simple, but standard medicine, they won't run them. Like, you're not going to get a B12, even though I would literally do it every single new patient that comes in. We check their B12, folate, D, whole iron panels, thyroid, testosterone, DHEA, all these, along with your standard cholesterol, CBCs, and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
you're not going to get that. And then, you're basically, because they're always looking, I don't want to say always, there's great medical doctors out there, great relationships with many medical doctors. And naturopathic doctors could do the same thing. We could all fall into this same unfortunate category, but we look for that disease condition, because you can't diagnose anemia when we talked about iron until that CBC shows it. Until the complete blood count shows like your hemoglobin is low, you can't diagnose anemia. So up until then, there's really not you can diagnose iron deficiency, but nutritional deficiencies don't go over well as far as getting paid for insurance and that kind of thing. So it's going to be hard. And there's not you're not going to get a blood transfusion or an iron infusion if you're just iron deficient. Most doctors are like, no. Which I'm not a proponent of iron infusions myself. I used to do them for some patients, but I've found ways around that quite easily now. Say the person in your category of athletes is like, I want to get my iron levels checked. I want to make sure I'm good to go. So you would want to get that CBC done, and then make sure you get what's called a serum iron. Get your transferrin level checked. Transferrin is basically the protein that shuttles iron around in the blood. Get your TIBC, total iron binding capacity. So that's basically how desirous basically is your body, your cells, to grab hold of that iron and put it on the red blood cell. And then get your ferritin level checked. Ferritin is considered the gold standard for iron because it is the most consistent marker. Now, you can have the thing about people that do marathons, ultra marathons, real Ironman, that kind of stuff. You could be inflamed, right? Because of the intensity on your body. So some of these people will have ferritin levels that are, they're 80, 90, 100. You think, well, that's great ferritin level. You should be good to go. But they have palpitations. They find their heart rate is, 20 points higher than they want it to be, or they would expect, it's 75, 85, and it's normally like 55, and they're underperforming. And the thing is, which is why you want to get, also iron saturation is another one you want to get on there. Oftentimes the iron saturation, even though the ferritin will be normal, the iron saturation will be low. And that is kind of like your other signal that, oh, you know what? The reason my ferritin is elevated or normal, but yet I'm feeling everything that suggests iron deficiency, is because of literally the irritation, inflammation on my body. Because ferritin is an acute phase reactant. If any of this is too much, just let me know. But it's an acute phase reactant, meaning that as there is inflammation in the body, whether it's you got a cold, you got cancer, you even like you had COVID, you have or you I just did a crazy workout and I've done, this multiple times in a row and now I'm just feeling exhausted. There's potential you could actually raise your ferritin level from that inflammation, especially maybe if you're not like a high whole food value eating human being. And so you could have basically this happened to a rugby player where he was like, man, yeah, I was feeling just tired all the time. And my ferritin is 90. Come to find out his iron saturation was low. He started, taking some iron, and literally within 3 days, he was like, I am straight up crushing these guys. This is crazy. And his ferritin ends up running around 120 or so, which some people would say, that's kind of on the higher end. But when it comes to athletes and people that are, really putting out, generally speaking, I find anywhere from 70 to 120 is actually quite perfect. And usually if hair loss is a thing, you will not get your hair back until it's at least above 70 for 3 months. And a couple of patients I've seen even upwards of 100 to get that hair coming back. Which hair's awesome. The biggest reason that really pulls you all the way into let me check it out. My hair will not come back. My hair's falling out, kind of thing, especially for the ladies. So yeah, you definitely don't want to just get blood work done and say, okay, that's what it is. We do have these things called Google. There's all, even the lab itself, actually, like Ulta Labs or LabCorp Quest, you can go on their site, you can look and see what those values really mean, and see, okay, well, if I'm, if the range is, say for testosterone for guys, the range is 250 to 1200, pretty general range. It's okay, well, I'm 275. According to your insurance, you cannot, you should do nothing. You're totally good to go. But in reality, that person's not going to be happy. I mean, that gentleman is not going to be happy. You're going to be way underperforming. You're not going to recover as fast as you want to recover, compared to if you're at 750, 800 kind of thing. So you definitely want to check. The same with ferritin. Currently, anywhere from like some labs are at 7, some are at 15, some are at 20. Those would be the bottom end of ferritin. And, the Gastroenterology Society of America just put out saying, really 50 should be the cutoff. And we know at a ferritin of 30, the bone marrow actually starts slowing down its production of red blood cells. So you don't want to wait until you're basically compromised to start helping yourself out and like maybe change up your food routine. Maybe I'm not getting enough red meat. Maybe I need to, I'm drinking so much milk because it's like an easy go-to. And unfortunately that milk, which dairy's, and it's not that dairy's bad for us. It's just that it can bind iron, and a person, and some people, especially these athletes, it's such an easy go-to. Like grabbing yogurt, grabbing kefirs, grabbing milk. That's like easy calories, and it's generally wholesome. And so I'm like literally that casein and that calcium are binding up all the iron I'm putting in. And so we only get it's already challenging enough to get iron into our body. And so if you're having 3, 4, 5 servings a day of the dairy, which I've seen this happen multiple times in children now, you could actually be iron depleted and, way underperforming. And literally all it is, you just maybe cut your dairy in half. And then that amount of iron you're taking in will be sufficient to manage the lifestyle you're injecting on yourself.
So you focus more on the ferritin, the iron panel when you're working on your functional lab tests with athletes or just people in general? Are you looking at the whole picture and then identifying what's high or low? But what led you to focusing more on the iron panel?
I would look at everything. Plenty of times ferritin is normal, iron is normal. That is just one that is so overlooked. And it's the simplest thing to solve. Like, this is so easy to get rid of your heart palpitations. This is so easy to get you, out of this depressed state, out of this anxious state. All we got to do is give your body this mineral that is, the most depleted mineral / metal. And there's 2 billion people on planet Earth right now that are deficient in. Well,
can you just say though, what are some signs and symptoms of low iron levels? That would be good. And then let's look at, why would they be so low in people? If we can summarize that, might be easier for people to listen and grasp, but they might relate to. So low iron or low ferritin, what are some common signs and symptoms that you see?
Yeah, so fatigue is definitely the most common one.
Yeah.
And then there's hair falling out, feeling like your nails are not growing like they used to, depression, anxiety, heart palpitations, and really the resting heart rate being up, especially for athletes. That's the most common one that athletes will see, because so many athletes are wearing watches or bands.
Their aura.
It's like, sheesh, it's like I'm doing just what I was doing before. And during my workouts, my heart rate's 10, 50 points higher. During just rest, sleep at night, it's 10, 15 points higher. What's going on? And that's, of course, is just literally wasting energy. Heart's beating 10, 15 times more per minute when you're doing stuff. So that would be generally fatigue, lethargy, just my motivation, my drive isn't there like it was before. And then you check your iron levels. Ferritin being the main one, I would say. If you're feeling all that and your ferritin is high, it's possible to have too high iron levels, and that is also an issue. There's this nice balance, but there's pretty big margin for that area there. It's not like, I took some iron and I'm gonna have hemochromatosis, I'm gonna have iron overload, or I ate a steak and now I'm gonna have iron overload. Especially if you're running a lot. And so things that might cause or promote iron loss, for women, of course, it's like their menstrual cycles. Every month you're losing blood, you're losing iron. And depending on losing, that can play a huge role in whether or not your body has the capacity to build that back up over the month. And then there's, that foot strike hemolysis. So like every time, people are running cement, asphalt, it's not as big on tracks or treadmills, but definitely cement, asphalt. Every time that hit, there's little capillaries that are breaking, and you're literally there are red blood cells, iron through that process. And it can be shocking, but I just had, a guy, a firefighter from California that I was consulting with. And, he was saying, I just run about 50 miles a week. I don't do much running, kind of like a hobby of mine. I was like, man, 50 miles a week. You are like 0.001% of the population running 50 miles a week. And literally that is what's happening to him. That's why he's a guy, 35-year-old that's iron deficient, which you don't always think that in a gentleman. And he's not vegetarian or vegan or anything like that. But literally he's just losing iron that way. And so, if he, basically takes his running from asphalt to cement and just, okay, I'm going to do more trail running. Treadmill running isn't very fun, but if he wants to put down, and he can take a little bit of iron or try to increase his red meat intake kind of thing, to offset that. But yeah, it's definitely overlooked, but it's all over the literature, this foot strike hemolysis. And then you'll lose a little bit through sweat too. I mean, stress response, the more stressed you are, and stress is normal in that, well, we just have to figure out how to metabolize it appropriately. But, it affects our digestive system. And so hydrochloric acid production can be down. Hydrochloric acid production's down. We're not going to set off this whole cascade downstream through our small intestine that would permit us to absorb iron appropriately. Same thing with, lower thyroid function. If lower thyroid function's happening, we're not going to have the digestive juices, the gastric juices to promote iron uptake. So a lot of people who are low thyroid will also be low iron. And then if you're low iron, you often be low thyroid, and they just kind of keep playing on. So it's that's where I think it is high value. If you're going to get, I would never just test a person's ferritin level. That's such a teeny little itsy bitsy picture of like why potentially they're in that situation in the first place. And so it is high value. Like I said, probably $120 if you're paying cash. That is, you could get almost anything that's not just completely crazy out there. But anything that 99.9% of the population would be having issues with, you could see it right there in your labs.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is also looking at, the other markers, if the hemoglobin, the RBC panel, and looking at those markers are higher or lower. Because I know a client that his doctor actually gave him iron pills without even testing his iron, which kind of annoyed me. I'm like, shouldn't they test your iron levels instead of just looking at your hemoglobin, RBC, and looking at those markers? And really look at the why, because I always have learned to investigate why is that low, why is that high, what's the indication of, further testing of its heavy metal toxicity, looking at your GI test, looking at H. pylori, different things. But instead of just giving iron pills without testing iron, I think you'd have to, not gas. We say test and not gas all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's the thing with, you could have anemia, but it doesn't mean it's always iron deficiency. There's plenty of other reasons you could have anemia. A lot of, I would say, more aggressive, undesirable things as far as why you would actually be in anemic state, or your bone marrow maybe sluggish. That may not actually be iron deficient. So, I mean, it's, I literally.
What else could it be?
I had a patient who just got an iron infusion because she broke her femur. And she was in the hospital, and her daughter called me up and said, hey, they just gave her an iron infusion because her CBC said she was, iron deficient. I was like, okay, send me the labs. And, they had actually run a ferritin and all that. And it's like, no, those are completely normal. Her levels, her iron saturation is normal. All that's normal. She does not have iron deficiency. She does not need an iron infusion. And it's like, you don't want to give just because the CBC is low. I mean, it could be, there's what's called anemia of chronic disease. And so anemia of chronic disease, people with any manner of autoimmune condition, whether it's lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's, scleroderma, any of these cancers, you could have anemia that's showing up on your CBC, and that not be because of iron deficiency. And the last thing you want to give somebody who already has plenty of iron and is in an inflamed state is a bunch of iron, especially via an infusion, because iron is a pro-oxidant molecule. It is an irritant if the body doesn't need it. And you would have to give a lot orally to make that happen. But via infusions, you're instantly giving a person, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 milligrams of IV iron. So yeah, it's definitely, it's so simple. It takes like an extra, 24 hours. You'd find out, okay, great. There's my ferritin levels. Yes, that's the iron's the issue. The iron's not the issue. And if it's not the issue, then it's like, we need to go down the road and figure out, okay, what would be promoting that anemia? What about, my stress? my, is there some low grade autoimmunity, other inflammatory things going on? Even, people with chronic viral illness like Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, Lyme, those kind of things can have anemias, what looks like anemia from that basically inflammation on their system, when you could like pump them full of all the B vitamins and iron, nothing's going to change on their panel. I didn't make them if basically getting the thing that's behind the scenes promoting that activity.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I find. Even I know some people doing Tony Robbins' program, for example, Life Force or Viome, they're just getting the lab results. And because of those markers, what's high or low, they're giving supplements for it. And to me, it's not looking at the whole picture. Why is that running low? Why is it running high? And it's really kind of frustrating because you're never getting to the root cause, and you're just, again, another type of Band-Aid. If it's taking B vitamins, it's taking this supplement or that supplement, but not why is that low? So is that really going to help restore it and bring it back to homeostasis, or is it just going to be temporarily fixed because you're not really getting to, whoa, you've got this infection or this sensitivity, something else?
No, 100%. There's definitely a lot of labs out there now that will test for, or even like gene testing. You get gene testing done, and the gene testing says, this pathway, COMT pathway is low, MTHR pathway is low, so you need to, take, tons of folate or methylfolate, or you need to, take tons of B6 or thiamine or something like this, which they all have. I'm not saying they don't have a benefit. I've seen miracles happen, a lot of this stuff, and I use those kind of testing. But this is a human being, a human body, and like I said, it's not like this one-way street. Things are going like this. It's literally like this, happening all the time. That's what's happening. And there's just all this constant billions of interactions happening all the time. And so I think it's super helpful to step back and say, all right, what is happening? I eat 2 to 10 times a day. What's happening there? What's happening with that food? I'm checking my phone 400 times a day. I'm sitting inside for 8 hours a day. I'm sitting at a desk for this amount of time. These relationships I'm in, how is all that impacting me? And for so many people, sure, maybe their B12 is low, maybe their iron is low, and that you help that out. But a lot of times that is just like one little cog in the wheel of really what they need to get themselves rocking. And there's no amount of, spectra cell testing or different testing that's going to just also make it all right. Because, I started taking, this new special multivitamin and vitamin K and all this kind of stuff because, my cell levels were low. There's always some underlying thing or lifestyle or endeavor that's promoting that. It's not to say I use plenty of vitamins in practice. I take plenty of vitamins myself. Not to say those aren't fantastic, can be awesome. But yeah, this for that, just over and over, this for that, and that literally is like standard medicine. That's like acute medical care. You have, salmonella poisoning, so we're going to give you this bacteria. You have H. pylori, so we're going to give you, these triple antibiotic therapy and an acid blocker. It's like, well, yeah, but why would this person get H. pylori and this other person who went to the exact same restaurant not get H. pylori? I guarantee if you went and ate out, you both ate H. pylori. That's just how it works when you eat out these days. And what happened, it probably has everything to do with their hydrochloric acid production. If that hydrochloric acid, that pH is getting low and you're like, can incinerate anything that comes through, you're probably not going to end up with H. pylori. So what we need to do is to figure out, okay, how are we going to get this patient to start producing more hydrochloric acid as would be optimal? And that's probably going to have to look lifestyle and the other foods they're eating. And, it can definitely go on forever. And so that can be deflating for some people. So I think there often needs to be some symptomatic relief, coupled with the deep dive into, all the nuances of the human being and how to optimize their health. But yeah, I'm 100% with you. It's that we want it to be so simple, but unfortunately with the human being, it's not going to be that simple. Rarely is it that simple.
Yeah, no, I agree. So what about foods? I was talking about what you eat, when, why, how, and where. That it is what foods help us, improve our iron levels is like there's heme and non-heme iron levels, foods, and how to increase absorption if they are plant-based. What are some things that you found that works for people? Because, plus digestion enzymes and things like that to actually break it down. Because I always think find a lot of people eat these good nutrient-dense whole foods, but they don't actually properly break it down. Partially because they don't have the enzymes, partially because they're eating in sympathetic fight or flight.
So true. Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, I've seen people eating tons of red meat and be iron deficient, and that a lot of that tells you either they're losing blood, they're just not keeping up, but there's also the gut itself. More and more, I'm trying to convince people I consult with that, hey, we got to think about if you're putting in say 30 milligrams, say a person's supplementing with iron, 30 milligrams of iron, and your iron levels are not going up, you do not need to take 60 milligrams of iron or 90 milligrams of iron, or there's these huge, almost 100,000 person groups now that are promoting 100, 200 milligrams of iron a day in supplemental form because your iron levels aren't going up. And you think that is crazy. No, you're literally, we're decimating our flora. We're creating, just like this cesspool in our small intestine. So I think it's just high value to recognize that more is not, it isn't just more. You don't just need more. You do have to look at, hydrochloric acid production. You got to look at, your bacterial makeup. Stool analysis can be fantastic. But I also think, so I was seeing a lot related to the person who's eating red meat and their levels they're not noticing benefits from iron related things.
Yeah.
Back to your question about eating, the heme iron, the non-heme iron sources. Heme, which a funny or interesting thing is often overlooked, is that, say a piece of red meat, actually is about 50-50 heme and non-heme iron. And so there is actually non-heme iron in red meat. And so people say, oh, you can't, get non-heme iron, get enough of it, get enough iron via non-heme sources. We don't have studies showing whether the red meat, how much of it's heme and how much is non-heme we uptake when we eat it. But I think we would, if we were able to do those studies, we were able to probably find, oh my goodness, it's about 50-50. So I just have not seen, we talk about 100% non-heme, your spinach and all your green leafies that would have, iron in them. I have not seen a person who literally is only eating, strictly non-heme sources. So that means zero meat products whatsoever. I have not seen them be able to maintain iron levels. I've probably tested, I don't know, 8,000, 9,000 people. Not all of those are vegetarian, but I was saying, I have some cancer patients that we do keep pretty much vegetarian diet. But they'll get in, at least twice a week, 4 ounces of beef, or egg, a few eggs or chicken. And they will maintain just fine. And I generally try to kind of keep them on the lower end anyway of what I would say is optimal. But it is pretty challenging. Even if you load it up on vitamin C and oranges and all this kind of stuff with your non-heme, there's it's just you're going from 1% to 2% absorption rate for the non-heme source in a whole food form, versus 17 to 35% absorption rate in the heme source. So it's to smash steaks and hamburgers and, this kind of stuff all the time. But if you have, an ounce, it's you're going to be way ahead of, the entire month of vegetarian sources of non-heme by just having that ounce of meat, say once a week kind of thing. So I would, if you're taking iron supplements, then, having the vitamin C on board definitely does help. But I've not seen much, which I know there's people out there who claim otherwise. And there's always there's aberrations. There's people that have very special circumstances where their body does do those kind of things, absorb enough non-heme. But I would say, that's like the person that smokes and lives to 100, and that's fantastic. But it's that was a very special human being. There's something about their gene pool. They were able to eat to 100 and still smoke and not have lung cancer and like that. And I would say that's what I've seen too with actual strict vegetarian or strict vegan lifestyles, is that unless you're supplementing with, most athletes, even there's some powerlifters that are vegetarian, vegan, that kind of thing. But it's but they're supplementing with all manner of things. That's not that's not reality. That's the beauty of the industrialized world, that we have all this extra stuff we can do beyond food, basically, to live a particular lifestyle because of whatever reason we're doing that. So purely from a food source, I would say, Debbie,
Yeah.
I've not basically that capacity to maintain over the long term. I think there's probably some indigenous tribes out there, that have very specific prebiotics and probiotics they're eating all the time that may be able to subsist off it without meat sources. But industrialized world, we generally have a very streamlined and just a few families of flora. We don't have this just robust, endless groupings of bacterial that are different that permit us to do a lot of things. That say, if you're up in some indigenous region where you're eating all these tubers and stuff all the time, that your body it can like extract all kinds of craziness, and maintain nutritional status. But I wish we were there. I'm trying to get myself there. I'm trying to get a good variety and keep them and we definitely make high value, keep the processed foods out. But we just we're inside all the time. There's so much hygienic stuff done. It really slows down our capacity to have those basically flora adaptive mechanisms in place to be able to extract kind of next level nutrition from food.
So what are some steps for people to get started on, what do they get? Blood work, what to ask their doctor, focusing on more nutrient dense whole foods, as most of them seem to be, like I just had a list open of foods that are higher in iron at the top of the list. I don't know if there's an order: red meat, beef, lamb, pork, poultry, seafood, organ meats. And then there's, vegetarian foods, nuts, seeds, pumpkin seeds, cashews, almonds, dark chocolate, spinach, kale, broccoli, Swiss chard. But adding these foods into diet, I find most people are not digest them properly, and they might be having steak every night and they're still having some low levels. So it's looking at, going back to what I said, choosing those nutrient dense whole foods, but proper digestion, eating slowly, chewing their food, being mindful, not mindless eating. I think that makes a difference, I would think. And then, blood tests and how to take action. So how would you get people started and to make sure their iron levels are at optimal levels?
Totally. So if a person has any thought that way, I mean, I'd say if you are a heavy runner, you're crazy not to get your levels checked, because it is going to be, if it's low, you're like, whoa, this is crazy. And plus if our iron levels are low, then, we cannot supply the energy needed for the heart to work appropriately. We cannot supply the energy needed for muscles to work appropriately. And so recovery is going to be lower, chance of injury is going to be higher, and actual stress on the heart muscle itself, oxidative stress, is going to be increased by not having sufficient iron on board. So it is definitely high value. So ferritin level, the TIBC, the iron saturation, the transferrin level, and then just your standard serum iron, and then the CBC, those would be like, and I always do a B12 and folate along with that, because you need B12 and folate to make red blood cells. I would do, your TSH, free T3, free T4 at a minimum on the thyroid panel, those would always be my stuck together if I was going to check somebody's iron levels out, because iron can masquerade as lower thyroid function. Lower thyroid function can masquerade as lower iron levels. And if a person's cool with it, I would check their iodine levels. It's just iodine is it's like $57 just for that one test. So not everybody wants to put that out. Usually if you do it one time, you're good. You're pretty good to go. But I would say, myself, when I check my iodine levels the first time, it's like, shoot, I'm super low. My wife's was super low too. And, cause he's like, if we're not eating seaweed or, that kind of stuff, there's not a whole lot of, and if I'm not eating, we just use, sea salts and stuff. There's not really an iodine in there unless it's been iodized. So, that is definitely one to put in the mix. If you got, a couple extra bucks that you mind spending, and sometimes we'll cover that. So I would do that. And I would definitely be jumping to, like you said, if you say you're eating meat at night and you're like, geez, I eat meat and my iron levels are terrible. I don't think my period's that intense as a lady. I'm making extra efforts to, not, running softer ground or grass and this kind of stuff. But my iron levels are still low, or I'm showing my folate's like 6 and it should be over 13. And these things, and I'm getting plenty of leafy greens in, then, I think it's high value to be thinking, okay, which is valuable anyway, but maybe like lemons or limes or things that stimulate your digestive secretions, apple cider vinegar. You definitely can't take, like gentian and, bitter herbs and that kind of stuff as well. But chewing on anything bitter, even like a raw piece of lettuce, just chewing on, just tasting that real bitterness. Sometimes it's hard to find these days because we, stuff in the grocery store, like it's all dampered down. But if you get it straight from your garden or somebody else's garden, like, well, that is bitter. This is doing the trick. But those bitters can really help stimulate that initial hydrochloric acid secretions, salivary, amylase and everything, which, that's high value. We need that to digest the food we put in. That's kind of like, it's not what you put in, but it's what you get out of what you put in, right? So yeah, I think that is definitely high value thinking about, okay, if I'm, like you mentioned here, that sympathetic fight or flight state, a sympathetic state is like, I'm going to run from the tigers and bears. So digestive secretions, other than like losing my bowels, that's all that's going to happen. There's no hydrochloric acid production happening. There's no, enzymes coming from the pancreas or bile salts being sent out to the gallbladder to help digest food. So, a couple.
Take 3 breaths before you start eating, push pause and just inhale, exhale. It's amazing what that does.
Right. And it just keeps adding up. You just like, I'm just going to keep doing this. Next, that feels normal. And amazing enough, your nutritional status is up, and your gas, your bloating, your indigestion has gone down significantly. So that's why in
nutritional therapy, we always start north to south, not just, taking this for that, but just work on, how are you eating? Are you taking that moment to shift to the parasympathetic state? Are you digesting your food properly by chewing and eating slowly? Are you just wolfing it down and working and doing, multitasking while you eat? But, always starting north on everything, I think, and work your way down is a good way to start.
Yeah, huge.
So we're running out of time, but sorry, go ahead, and then we'll put links in everywhere everyone can learn more about what you do.
Sure. Yeah, I was just saying, I think, like you just mentioned, like the simplest things, those are overlooked over and over and over again, but literally those are powerful things, because those things that we were doing every second, every day, multiple times every day, it's like, man, if we put all our energy there, it's like hard for dysfunction to show up in our life.
Free things though, but teaching people the free things, or, you're already eating, but let's choose this instead of that. And then focus on how you're eating and when you're eating to really optimize your health, I think, are things that I always want to remind people. Morning sunshine, breathing, doing some stretching, different things you can do to help your health. It doesn't have to cost more money is always what we want to start with first. Like, what can you do now that doesn't have to cost you money, so you don't have any excuse? It's a choice that you make.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you again, but where do we find more information?
Sure. Yeah. So, if you want general iron stuff, endless information on like how you could get after iron for an athlete, pregnant women, especially, you can go to optimizeiron.com. And then my general, where I blog and write and all that kind of stuff, is at drwholeness.com. And
that's
come
great.
over and
Yeah, I love what you're doing. That's so important. So thank you so much for educating us on the importance of checking our iron levels and reminding them again to make these choices and be preventative and not wait until you're feeling all these signs and symptoms of fatigue and poor performance outcomes and slow recovery and all this other stuff that, we want to do stuff before we get to that point that it takes not just weeks to fix, but now you're on to years. But do it now.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Dan. Appreciate it. You're doing good work.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.